Chairman will adjourn the meeting and to reinstate the meeting. Please note that the meeting is being recorded. All members of the committee should have their video on but will remain muted until the chairman invites them to speak. All members of the press and public will remain muted unless they have registered to speak, and the chairman will let them know when they can make their representation. The format of the meeting will be as per the agenda published, and a copy of the officer presentations can be found on the committee webpage. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I also welcome you to this committee, the Development Committee. I'm Councillor Filmer, Chairman of that committee. Just to give you a few details of the background of the committee and how we'll be proceeding this morning. Each application before us will be taken in turn. The officers will outline the application, and that will be followed by a public speaking time. The members will then debate and decide on the applications. For members of the committee wishing to speak, can I just remind you, if you can indicate through the chat box, because that is easier to keep track of who is wishing to speak, and I will then call you in turn. During the debate, there will be a proposer and a seconder for a resolution. Members will then vote on this, in turn confirming that they've been present throughout the application being considered, and will vote either for, against, or abstain. The votes will then be counted and the result announced. I'll now ask the officers and councillors who are taking part in the meeting this morning to confirm that they can see and hear me and to introduce themselves. So if we start with the planning officers, is Mr. Noon present?
Yes, I am, Chairman. My name's Adrian Noon. I'm the lead officer for the East, supporting the case officers and presenting the application at Bradley Cross, and I can see and hear everybody. Thank you.
Right. So can I just check then, is Lisa Rash present or not in that case?
No, she's not
okay
today.
Emma Chorley?
Good morning. Yes, I'm one of the senior planning officers in the East team, and I can see and hear everything.
Thank you. And Dean Titchener?
Yep. So I'm also one of the senior planning officers in the East team, and I can see and hear everything.
Thank you. From our legal team, Dawn Lehman.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Dawn Lehman. I'm legal advisor to the committee, and I can hear and see everything. Thank you.
Thank you. From our Democratic Services team, Layla Nicholson.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Layla Nicholson. I'm the committee manager for today. Thank you.
Thank you. And if we then come to the members of the committee, and I will go through those members in turn. If again you can just confirm you're here. I believe the first member we will have is Councillor Glassford.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Alec Glassford, representing Fairfax Ward. I can see and hear everything.
Is Councillor Scott present?
Yes, good morning, Chairman. Good morning, members. Councillor Liz Scott here from the Axevale Ward, and I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Sedgemoor District Councillor Alistair Hendry for Burnham Sea Central. I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Councillor Facey.
Good morning, Chairman. Councillor Mike Facey, Burnham-on-Sea North, and I can see and hear the meeting, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Revens.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Bill Revens, representing North Petherton Ward, and confirming I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kingham.
Yes, good morning. Councillor Stuart Kingham, representing the West Podens, and I can hear and see all. Thank you.
And Councillor Bradford.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. Good morning, officers. Councillor Alan Bradford, representing North Petherton Ward, and I can hear and see everything.
Councillor Perry.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Councillor Liz Perry, representing the King's R Ward, and I can confirm I can see and hear everything.
Thank you. Councillor Grimes.
Good morning, everybody. Councillor Tony Grimes, Deputy Chairman, Barrow and Breen Ward. I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I said earlier, I'm Councillor Filmer, Chairman of the committee, member for the Knoll Ward, and I can see and hear all the members and officers as well. I think, Mrs. Nicholson, that's all the members who are present this morning.
Yes, Chairman, we've got a fair number of apologies, so I'll give them now. So Councillors Bolt, Gibson, Granter, Murphy and Pearce have all given their apologies this morning.
Thank you very much. Just to mention also that we do have a number of other members of the public with us, some of whom are registered to speak this morning. We also have members of the public here to observe the meeting, and we have other members of the council present, also in observer role, including the portfolio holder for development management. Right, members, if we move on to the first item on our agenda, which we've dealt with, which is apologies for absence. Urgent business is the next item. I'm not advised that there is any urgent business that we are not already covering on our agenda. I would just mention at this point in time that the application that was on page 9 is withdrawn from our agenda. That is the application for Stone Allerton. That has been resolved as a delegated matter because the parish council withdrew their comments, and therefore it's been a delegated decision. Public speaking time. Members of the public, for those of you who've registered to speak, will take each application in turn. The officers will outline the background and detail of the application and will then come to yourselves for comments. I will ask you to enable your microphone, and then just to confirm that it is working. You then have 3 minutes to address the committee. You will hear, with 1 minute left to go, a bell ring, which hopefully just like that, and that will, as I say, remind you that you've got 1 minute to go, and if you can obviously draw your comments to a close before that minute is elapsed, that would be very helpful. Item 4 is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations from members? Again, if you can indicate in the chat box if you wish to declare. I believe Councillor Kingham.
Yes, good morning, Chairman. Yes, on page 26, Sunset Bay Farm application. I've taken no part in any discussion or regarding this application.
Are there any other declarations? No, in which case, just so members of the public, so you're clear, if members have an interest or in an application, they need to declare that at the start of the meeting so that everyone is aware. The declaration you've heard today is a what's called a non-predetermination declaration. In effect, we have a standing order within this committee which says that members can either be involved at the district council level or at the town and parish council level, not both. This is to avoid any perception that they've made up their mind before they come to this meeting. So therefore, where you've heard a member declare that they've taken no part at the town or parish level, that enables them to remain part of the committee and to debate and decide on the applications before us. If we move then on to the applications before us this morning, the first application we have is on page 14, where we have a speaker present, which is the Wedmore application. And Emma Chorley, if you could introduce this one, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Bear with me 1 moment. I'll just share my screen. So this is an outline application with some matters reserved for the erection of a self-built dwelling at the Hill Mill Lane in Wedmore. Following further comments that have been received, the applicant has requested that the item be deferred to allow for further consultation for the sake of completeness on those changes. To briefly set out what those changes are, the matter of scale has been removed from the outline application. That would be considered as indicative only moving forward. In addition, following further comments regarding ecology, the county ecologist has again been reconsulted and has requested a pre-commencement condition. Based on the applicant's request and the changes that have taken place, for the sake of completeness, we agree further consultation period would be useful. It would allow all of the information to be made publicly available and for any comments to be received. And as such, I would recommend deferral of the application.
Thank you very much. In this case, members, because there has been extra information that has come forward that now needs to go out for further public consultation, I think it obviously makes sense for us to defer the item. What we're going to propose to do is I'm going to propose that we do defer that item. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Grimes. What will then happen is obviously it will come back to us in due course, and because we're only dealing with the deferral, that's why we won't be taking public speakers on this at the moment. The speakers have been advised previously that this was what we were likely to do. If members choose not to defer the application, then obviously we will deal with the application itself. But obviously in the circumstances, it would obviously seem to make sense to allow this to go out for further public consultation so that we have a fuller picture to come back to committee. Is there any debate on the deferral, please? I'm not seeing anyone indicate either. Yes, I am. Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that. Have we have anyone representing with local knowledge regarding that one, so we're more clear of these things when it comes forward?
We do have. There would have been a speaker on this who is someone who wishes to speak against, but obviously that is against the application itself, not dealing with the deferral. So should this application come back to committee, once the consultation has taken place, then it would go through the normal process of having speakers, either parish, ward members and public would be able to come to that meeting and address us.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. Okay.
Okay. If there are no further comments or questions on the deferral, I'll move to members to take a vote on the deferral, please. So if we start with Councillor Glassford, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I am in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Then if we then come to Councillor Scott.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Again, I agree that we should defer this application, and I've heard and seen everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can see and hear everything, and yes, I'm in favour of the application being deferred. Thank you. Now.
Thank you, Councillor Facey.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've been present throughout the presentation, Chairman, and I support the officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Revens.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I've seen and heard most of it. I had a brief phone call in the middle from a local resident, but I'm happy to support the deferral.
Thank you. Councillor Kingham.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think with the more information that's required for this application, I think it'd be far better. I therefore support the deferral.
Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fully supportive of.
Thank you. Councillor Perry.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I fully support the officer's recommendations for deferral. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've seen, heard the debate, and I'm for it. Thank you.
Thank you, and I've also been present during the whole debate, and I'm also for the recommendation to defer. Can I just confirm, Mr. Nicholson, is that all members present have voted?
Yes, Chairman, that's everybody. Can I just clarify with Councillor Revens? Did you actually miss any of the presentation that was actually in front of you? I just want to know whether you've.
I didn't miss any of the presentation. It was after the proposal had been made and seconded that someone called. I took the number and.
That's lovely. That's it. I just wanted to clarify that was a correct, what you've said. In that case, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that application is deferred for further information and reconsultation. Thank you very much. So if we move to our next application, which is the application on page 26, where we have a speaker present. And Mr. Titchener, would you like to introduce this one, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'll just get the presentation shared. And just let me know if you can see the presentation now.
We can now.
Excellent. Okay, so it's an application for the removal of a agricultural occupancy condition related to a permission, quite an old permission from the 1970s at Sunset Bay Farm, Birtle Road. in Birtle. Just to orient ourselves, so we're in a relatively small settlement of Birtle, and it's in quite a central location. So this outlined in yellow here is Sunset Bay Farm, pretty much in the centre of the village, with residential properties all around, and that's very much relevant to the considerations that we've had to make on this application. The agricultural operation that it relates to, the farming operation that takes place in buildings to the north. So these are these buildings here. And then the location plan just showing the red line. So here is the dwelling, Sunset Bay Farm, and again, just some of the agricultural operation within the blue line nearby. And just some photographs just to get a sense of the location. So this is the property subject to the application here, constructed in the 1970s. And as we can see, just looking up the road, it's set amongst other properties, mostly detached properties within their own plots, fairly sort of linear pattern of development on the north and south side of the road, and this sort of nestles in, adhering to that pattern of development. Just up here is the access that goes beside the property, leading up through to the agricultural operation beyond. And then looking sort of east, you see more detached properties, all of fairly varied style, but they're all sort of, nonetheless detached, adhering to that linear form, heading east out of the village in that direction. And you can see long shot here. So we are very much in the centre with residential development all around. And then bottom photo just showing some of the agricultural buildings that form part of this holding. And again, looking, this top photo stood to the rear in this land here, looking back towards some of the agricultural buildings beyond. And then the bottom photo is sort of stood close by to the agricultural buildings, and then looking back down the driveway to the rear of the application property, which is this one with the white render, and then showing some of the other properties sort of nearby and showing a bit of the separation distance between. The planning history is sort of relevant. So this dwelling was granted permission in 1972, and it's subject to standard agricultural occupancy condition that the occupation of the dwelling should be limited to persons employed or last employed full-time locally in agriculture, as defined in the Town and Country Planning Act 1971, as was relevant at the time. Now the application proposes to remove that condition so that the property can be occupied on an unrestricted manner. Now, the policy framework that controls these kind of applications is policy D10, that's relevant to rural workers' dwellings, and the policy states that removal of such conditions will not be supported unless it can be demonstrated that there is no existing or foreseeable need on the unit or in the area, and there has been an independent marketing exercise, so that's something members will be familiar with other applications we've brought here in the past. Now, the case for this application is such that the submitted application isn't seeking to meet those requirements. It hasn't provided a marketing exercise, and I'll explain the reasons for that. So it's been submitted on the basis that Birtle is a location where our new local plan, so the plan that's been adopted within the last 18 months, now is an area that can permit residential development subject to criteria, whereas in previous local plans, it was defined purely as countryside, where there was very limited circumstance for residential development. So under policy CO2 of our new local plan, there is a policy for infill housing in the countryside, and that allows new dwellings to be permitted in locations where there's a nucleated core of settlement, nucleated core of village with at least 10 dwellings, and providing it's genuinely infill. Now, that policy in its emerging form was used to permit a dwelling in 2018 immediately adjoining Sunset Bay Farm, so on the plot immediately to the west, which is a material consideration that we've taken into account when determining how to look at this application. That was determined by committee. And just, I've got the plans here from that application in 2018. Obviously, the elevation plans aren't relevant, and it's the location plan, which is quite small. But this property in orange is the one that was permitted in 2018 here. the application we're dealing with here at Sunset Bay Farm is immediately on its east side. So you can see the policy has been used so far to allow residential development immediately adjoining the property, and residential development that's not restricted in its occupancy in the same way that Sunset Bay Farm is. So occupancy conditions are typically imposed on applications because and agricultural occupancy conditions because those dwellings are being requested in locations where housing is not normally allowed. So that's because they're normally being requested in countryside locations where these agricultural operations are typically taking place. So, and we put the restriction on because otherwise we wouldn't allow new housing in those locations because it would be considered to be detrimental to the character of the countryside. However, where other policies allow development, such as infill in this case, then it follows that a dwelling would not be detrimental to the character of the countryside. Just point out there was a typo on the final line of page 28 of the report in regard to this section. It should actually state it would follow that a dwelling would not be detrimental to the character of the countryside. So, provided a scheme complied with the infill criteria, it would be considered as acceptable. And that's the way we've approached this application to say, if there's a material planning consideration that says we'd allow something uncontrolled within this location, then that's the basis that we should be looking at this application, even though it is to remove an agricultural occupancy condition without the marketing. Now, the proposal is, as I showed, it's a detached dwelling in a row of existing dwellings. There is residential development on all sides. It would be considered an infill opportunity if there was no development there now, just in the same way that the plot immediately next door was an infill opportunity. It's a very obvious infill opportunity almost in that respect, given the very linear and standard pattern of development. It does not extend the built form into the open countryside, which is one of the criteria the policy says maybe we shouldn't be allowing infill properties if that's what they do, but that's not the case here. Burstwell is a settlement with a clearly defined nucleus, and obviously it has in excess of 10 dwellings, many more so than that. There is a requirement that there is a local connection and the applicants had farmed the site and occupied since the proposal was granted in the 1970s. So in that sense, the proposal in front of us actually complies with policy CO2 and would have been allowed as an infill in its own right. Now, there can be sometimes amenity considerations, which might mean that the proximity of an agricultural worker's dwelling to an operational farm building would give rise to potential amenity issues such as noise, odour, flies, for example. And in those cases, we might be reluctant to remove such a agricultural occupancy condition because those properties may only be suitable for agricultural workers because those level of nuisances are accepted in terms of the line of work that they would be in. But in this case, this property is one in a number of properties that are equally at a similar kind of distance from the farm. It's no closer to the farm buildings than the neighbouring properties. The farm buildings are all some distance to the north, about 40 metres by our measurements. No such amenity concerns were raised when granting the adjoining property to the west, and no objection has been raised by environmental health to the application in front of us. So we don't consider there's an amenity-based reason to resist the removal of the occupancy condition. So in summary, and one point to mention, the council previously adopted what was then Annex A of PPS 7. So that was Planning Policy Statement 7 that preceded the MPPF. So that's been adopted in the past by the council as a material planning consideration because it had very detailed guidance in it on how to deal with agricultural workers applications. And in that it states that applicants should not be unnecessarily I should say burdened, not boundary, apologies, unnecessarily burdened by planning conditions that have outlived their usefulness. So in consideration that because of the policies that have been introduced by the new local plan, it's now considered that condition has outlived its usefulness. The dwelling here would have been granted in its own right under the new policies, and therefore we recommend that the removal of the occupancy condition should not be resisted in this case. Because the application is a variation of conditions, it's a variation of that original permission from the 1970s, any conditions imposed on that original permission are either rolled forward, amended or deleted as appropriate, and the table on page 29 to 30 sets out the position with regard to each of those conditions. But to conclude, because of the reasons set out above, we feel in this case that permission should be granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned, we do have a speaker on this application. So Adrian Smith, if you could turn on your microphone, please, and just confirm that it's working.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So just again to remind you, you've got the 3 minutes to address the committee. You'll hit the bell when there's 1 minute left to go. So please start when you're ready.
Thank you very much. Good morning, councillors. My name is Adrian Smith. I am the agent for the application. I will now read out the speech that Mr. Cox intended to deliver today. Sadly, Mr. Cox passed suddenly on Tuesday night, so I will deliver this speech on behalf of his widow and joint applicant. Good day, councillors. As the owners of Sunset Bay Farm, Birtle, my wife and I are applying to have the agricultural tie removed from the farmhouse. We wish to do this for several reasons. Firstly, we have faithfully complied with the condition for 47 years, and although both past retiring age, are still here working part-time with our son on a daily basis. This has taken up all our married life, and so we now would like to put our affairs in order. It is felt that the existence of the tie would limit our market when the time comes to sell or leave the property to our children. Also, James, our son, was granted permission to build next to this property without a tie. He will be running the farm, and so his will become the farmhouse, and we feel no need for the tie to be retained here. Looking to the future, the continued existence of this tie could be causing similar problems to our children when they inherit. Also, we understand that one purpose of an agricultural tie is to restrict development in the open countryside. However, we live in the centre of Birtle and feel that this is no longer applies in this case. A brief history of the farm. It was formerly known as Birtle House Farm, owned by my grandparents. Birtle House, with its adjoining barn, was situated on the opposite side of the road to the land with no tie. When grandfather died in 1963, the farm was left to my father, who had worked the farm all his life. In 1964, he sold the farmhouse on the open market, but retaining the large barn for farm use. He had always lived in a private dwelling further away in the village, so that from that point on, there was no house tied to or associated with the land at all. Moving on, my wife and I wished to be married and run the farm, and thought the sensible thing to do would be to build a house actually on the land on the same side of the road. We were granted permission subject to the aforementioned tie, and the house was built the following year in 1973. Both of us have lived in the village all our lives and hoped that the parish council would support our application, and were somewhat surprised when they did not. Hence, we feel the need to appeal to you directly with all the facts. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you very much. Members, any comments or questions, please? Start with Councillor Kingham.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this is rather an awkward one at the moment. The fact that Mr. Cox obviously has now left us. On most occasions, say removal of agricultural ties is something that I'm not always happy with. I wouldn't always recommend it. But in this situation, I think that when Mr. Cox was alive, he gave the pieces of land to each one of his members of his family who have now developed their properties. James is the last to be built, which is to, like as Mr. Titchener said, to the west of his Sunset Bay Farm. That was granted with an agricultural tie, and I think now the time that has come that we should remove this one from Bayset Farm, as now Mr. Cox has no longer sort of worked on the farm. His son has taken over, and I was quite surprised that the parish didn't support it. But on this occasion, I would be in favour of the recommendation to approve the removal from Sunset Bay Farm. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also have Councillors Hendry and Revens. So Councillor Hendry.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Stuart Kingham is absolutely correct in everything he said there, obviously. There is no valid reason I can see to have this turned down. It complies with ecology, environmental health. Moving on from that, it's within policy CO2, as you can see yourself. there is just no valid reason I can pick up on for this. And yes, I think it's perfectly okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We'll come to Councillor Revens and then Councillor Scott. Councillor Revens.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, profound sympathies to the applicant's family on this one. It's a very difficult situation. I wonder if the officers could just advise me on policy D10, which advises on the removal of agricultural ties. Are we in compliance with that policy, with what we are saying? I know it was mentioned in the report. I'd just like it clarifying, please. And could I just ask for clarification on the neighbouring property, which I believe is the Sons? Is there an agricultural tie on that property as well? And if not, could the agricultural tie be moved to that property, releasing this one, please? Thank you.
Mr. Titchener.
Okay, just starting perhaps with the last point first. There isn't an agricultural tie on the adjoining property. The policy that comes forward was against the infill in the countryside policy. So that policy requires that, because it's related also to self-builds, that the applicants are the first occupant. So there's a tie in a sense, but not as an agricultural occupancy tie, so that it ensures that the local person that has applied in that case is the first person, but it's not an agricultural occupancy condition in any sense. That permission is extant. It can be implemented. We are not able to amend that permission now, so they are able to implement it and build it out. In regards to the question about are we in compliance with policy D10, now, as I've mentioned in the report, policy D10 has those provisions about where, if you're removing a occupancy condition, the steps that need to be gone through in terms of marketing. But the National Planning Policy Framework and Planning Acts do say that applications should be determined in accordance with the local plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. And material considerations would always be the implication of that other policies have on applications. And in this case, the application of policy CO2 infill in the countryside and the effect that that has in enabling applications to be granted here for residential development without agricultural occupancy conditions is a material consideration that has been weighed in the balance in determining that application, and that's considered to be the basis why we're bringing this recommendation today.
Councillor Revens.
Yeah, thank you. I think that clarifies the policy point for me. Thank you very much, Mr. Titchener. I do recall on a farm just around the road from me, I think it was Bell's Farm, the agricultural tie was moved to a cottage at Huntstyle Farm. And so that house then became onto the open market. I'm just wondering what the difference in it is to this case, where there is another property that the agricultural tie could be moved on to ensure that there is a property associated with the farm that's in its vicinity for its proper management and the welfare of the livestock.
Mr. Titchener.
It's difficult to comment in detail because I don't know the circumstances of that other application, unfortunately. Was that an application in the countryside, perhaps, where there would have been concerns about removing the tie full stop? Because what the situation here is partly that actually, because Burton was now a place where we allow residential development, it's not inherently an unsustainable location, and it's not inherently has an impact on the character of the countryside. But I could see there might have been a scenario on if you were out in the countryside where maybe you're trying to flip the tie to another property because actually you're still concerned about the controls in that place. But it's, like I say, it's quite difficult to comment, not fully knowing the circumstance of a different case.
Councillor Revens, and I've got Mr. Noon.
Yeah, I think you've actually hit the nail on the head for me there. The reason why it came to mind was we later had an application for a new dwelling that would have had an agricultural tie, having flipped the agricultural tie to another property. And I don't want to go into the history of a completely separate case, but I think I now understand the difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and Mr. Noon.
I think Mr. Titchener has covered the issue, and I think Councillor Evans is satisfied on that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Scott.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. That has actually helped me. I think I'd like to move the recommendation, actually, if I can.
Thank you. I think from my own point of view on this one, I must admit I am very reluctant to see agricultural ties taken off in normal circumstances. I think in this case, the local plan has moved on and changed the planning, the environment that's around there in terms of how we deal with this, and that's the issue in this particular case. And as other members have said, obviously our deepest sympathy to the applicant's family, but ultimately, in terms of the planning, it goes with the property and the land, so that will still carry on, even in the case of the joint applicant no longer being with us. I've got Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm more than happy to second the motion put forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions that members have? I'm not seeing anyone else indicate in the chat. So we have a recommendation to grant permission, proposed by Councillor Scott, seconded Councillor Hendry. And if we start this time with Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've seen and heard everything, and I'm for. Thank you.
Thank you. We've then got Councillor Perry.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I have seen the whole debate and heard the whole debate, and I am for.
Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've seen and heard everything, and I am for.
Councillor Kingham.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've heard and seen the whole debate, and I think with changes to our local plan, then I'm in favour of the application.
Thank you, Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've seen and heard the whole debate, and my vote is in favour of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Facey.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Been present throughout the debate, Chairman, and fully support the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Hendry.
I fully support this, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to say my full support for the family concerned and wish them well. Thank you.
And can you confirm you were present?
Thank you.
That's all right. Councillor Hendry.
Yes, I've seen and heard everything.
Terrific. Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've seen and heard everything, and I confirm that I support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Glassford.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've seen and heard the whole debate. I am for the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. And also I've seen and heard the whole debate, and I'm also in favour. Can we just confirm, Mr. Nicholson, that's all members who are present have voted?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it is, and that's unanimous.
Thank you very much. That is permission granted. Right, members, if you move then to our next application, which is back on to page 1, please. And we're in Cheddar. And I think it was Mr. Noon. Were you presenting this one, please?
Yes, I am. Just hopefully my screen comes up now.
Just, if you could hold on one moment, Mr. Noon, I've got Councillor Bradford. Are you indicating something? Your hand appears to be up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to pass on our regards to the family from the whole committee. I think, you know, it's gone on, that one's gone through now. Sorry. A bit slow.
No.
Slow of the mark.
That's all right.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Noon. We do have now the cover sheet.
Right. Thank you, Chairman. The application for a 2-storey extension of the to the house and the addition of a 1st floor extension. It is essentially a makeover of the existing property, which is a modest bungalow, to create a more substantial family home, taking advantage of the location. If I could just go to the location plan. Just to show you relative to the eastern edge of Cheddar, we're property up here. The light coloured dot is the garage, and then there's the main house just slightly to the northwest of that. There, just in closer detail, You can see the house there, sort of made up of a number of elements. There's an original part of the house with a wraparound extension to the north side of it. The proposal affects that the house itself, does no changes to the access or the parking arrangements. Elevated position, looking out over the roofs of the houses to the west, and then there's a sort of track up to the rear, heading east. That's where the final photograph is taken from, just for reference at this point. The application site there, the residential part of the site edged in red, with the just some additional land they own edged in blue to the rear. Existing block plan on the left, and on the right the new new house. As you can see, it sort of continues the theme, projecting gables to the west to take advantage of the view, and then a sort of wraparound extension at the rear, a flat roof screened by the roof structure with some lantern lights, and you can just see the little white dots that there, hopefully just to indicate that the roof lights, which have caused a degree of concern on this one. There's the existing house, sort of single story. This is sort of 3 bedrooms with an office and living space, and sort of quite a sort of complex roof form, reflecting sort of the additions to the original bungalow. And they're just in elevation. You can just sort of see a sort of relatively modest bungalow. The proposed floor plans, you can see it just sort of squares off the footprint. You can just sort of the heavier walls, external walls, are the sort of roughly the existing structure, and then in sorry, the other way around. So the heavier color is where it's been extended, and the lighter color, it just indicates where things are at the moment. And then obviously at first floor level we get a complete so that's the new, essentially the new element going upwards. And then just the roof plan, just at the bottom right hand corner, shows the original as submitted. As you can see, there are quite a number of roof lights on that. Those have given concern in terms of potential for light pollution when viewed from the AONB, and also in views into the AONB from the west. That we have sought to get reduced to the absolute minimum. The applicant has asked for these ones to be retained, essentially to light the area under the the bedrooms and stairs under at the front here, and then some just over some en suites at the back. There is also a double issue here in terms of not just the light pollution on the in terms of the AONB, but there's also an issue with bats here. The ecologist has looked at that and feels that subject to conditions that requires these to be sort of fitted with blinds, then that would minimise the impact on bats, and we feel that that will also minimise the impact on the AONB. And then just the elevations, you can see it is a sort of complete makeover of the existing property, just to take advantage of the location that it is in. This design would sit on its own plot. There are no immediately adjoining properties. We accept that the bungalow itself is undergoing a complete makeover. It's not of a character that is sort of deserving of retention in its original form, nor are there any contextual issues that say that a different property would look out of place in a row of other properties. It is isolated, so we think this design sits as comfortably in the site as the current design, and no objection raised on that ground. So just moving on to the photographs, coming up the lane, courtesy of Google Earth, we can see there is the bungalow, its garage over to the right. You can see it sits in its own plot.
At the moment, Mr. Noon, we haven't got that. We've now got the picture.
Sorry about that. So you can see coming up the lane, looking up at the property. It's in isolation. It's all with a lot of screening trees to the rear, but it does have views out to the west. just going a little bit further. Again, you can see the front there, the trees in behind. When we get round to the final photograph, I think the concern here, which I would hopefully illustrate that, is that the new roof form with the roof lights in it would result in light pollution. Well, I think given the position and with the trees in the background there, I don't think there would be prominent views of any of the of the roof lights in any event. They certainly wouldn't be seen from lower ground to the west. So I think hopefully we'll be able to sort of show that the concern about light pollution is not one that would lead us to rejecting this scheme. Just going to the next picture. This is just getting up to the side of the property and looking in through the access. Again, you can see the sort of setting. It is well screened by existing vegetation. And then just coming on to some more close-up photographs of the front of the property, just the view set back a little bit further on the second photograph on there. And then the next couple of slides, just looking at the side from within the site. As you can see, it is a modest property in itself of no great architectural merit, and a fairly free hand for someone to sort of do a makeover on. And then finally, pictures from that track to the rear. I think you can see what is going through the applicant's mind in terms of the spectacular views to the west. The house itself is just in behind the trees, behind the telegraph pole. So from up here, the roof structure, I don't think would be unduly prominent. It would be screened by the existing vegetation, and the fear that there would be light pollution from the roof lights and the roof lanterns that remain in the roof, I do not think it would be realised. So finally, to sum up, in terms of the design and scale, given the location, it's not considered to be out of character with any contextual considerations, nor is it a design that in itself is considered to be inappropriate for this location. In terms of light pollution, we have removed as many of the Velux windows as possible. We believe that the condition that is suggested to control them is appropriate. We've also got a condition that the ecologists would like to get smart glazing on the other side to ensure that light pollution going out the other way is minimised. And then we've also got the consideration of the bats. Those conditions to control light pollution are also relevant to safeguarding the welfare of bats. So we think the joint approach there would minimise the impact, and such that that on the A and B it would not be unacceptable. I would like just to suggest one additional condition, just to remove permitted development rights for the subsequent insertion of any roof lights. Having negotiated them out, we wouldn't want them to creep back in under permitted development rights. And I'd also just highlight the point that the existing bungalow could add roof lights under permitted development rights. That is why we think it's probably unreasonable to insist that every single one be removed. So subject to that extra condition, the recommendation is of approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. It seems to me that the main issue seems to be light pollution on this. And like has been said by the officer, this can be overcome. I have no problem at all with this at all. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the project's actually very good looking at it with the presentation. I'd like to thank the case officer anyway for doing such a presentation. Can I ask him just a question? It's not really much to do with the actual building as such. This is obviously rural and not urban. I can see that. When you take the roof off something and then you extend the ground floor and then you rebuild on top of it, do you pay the sill on the whole building because you've extended the ground floor, or do you only pay the sill on the new part, say the extension upstairs on the first floor, etc.? I'm a little bit confused with that. Thank you.
The sill issue is the case of because it's a large extension, it may sort of exceed the threshold. It's 100 square meters, so it may have a sill liability, but as a householder development, it would have a more or less automatic exemption. We don't seek SIL from householder applications. It is possible that if someone were to not claim the exemption, they might find themselves being SIL liable, but it is the net increase that the liability is calculated on. But
Okay,
the
thanks for that.
exemption is all more or less automatic.
Yeah, I was a bit unclear about that one. There's no impact on the AONB at all that you can see. Light pollution has obviously been sorted out with the blinds. So all in all, I think it's actually, watching the presentation, a very good project. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could ask one question, again relating to the lighting, Mr. Noon. Normally on applications like this, you mentioned smart glazing, and we've tended to use that as our method of dealing with either light pollution or dark skies issues, which of course roof lights do tend to have an impact on. Are we sure that mechanical blinds are going to be something that for the long term is something that will work, as opposed to smart glazing, which once it's there is there?
I think it's we had reservations when we first saw this condition, but I think once we think it through, it'll be very obvious if those blinds are not being used or not working. There's no reason to assume that it is unenforceable. The applicant is happy with the condition. If the blinds are not being used, it'll be instantly apparent, and we can tackle that. So I don't think it is reasonable to assume that condition just won't work.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Kingham and then Councillor Grimes.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think this is quite a change to that bungalow. I think it enhances it. I was just question what's the cladding on the new front gables, for one. Obviously, they've gone a long way to sorting out the light pollution. The two big gables, presumably that's timber cladding.
Yes, I believe it is. Just check.
Cedar.
I think it's been, yes, Mr.
Yeah, cedar
highlighted.
cladding.
Yeah.
Cedar cladding, I can confirm.
Yeah, so when that weather's down again, that will become grey and it will sort of blend in with the countryside. I'm quite happy with this, and I'd like to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Kingham. Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. I have no problems with this, and I'm happy to second the recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
No, that's absolutely fine, Mr. Chairman. I was going to second it anyway because I'm really happy with it and fine. Thank you.
Okay, and just to confirm, Councillors Kingham and Grimes, that's with the extra condition that was outlined by Mr. Noon?
Yes, Chairman.
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lehman. Right, if there are no further comments or questions from members, I'm not seeing anything indicated, in which case we'll move to a vote. The recommendation that's been moved and seconded is to grant permission with the additional condition. We'll start with Councillor Facey.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Been present throughout the debate, Chairman, and I fully support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Seen and heard everything. I am in full support of this. Thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, seen and heard the whole debate, and I'm in favour. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Glassford.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Seen and heard the whole debate, and I'm in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. Seen and heard the whole debate, and I'm for.
Councillor Perry.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've seen and heard the whole debate, and I am for.
Thank you. Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Seen and heard the whole debate, and I am for.
Councillor Kingham.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I've seen and heard the whole debate, and I am for.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've seen and heard the whole debate, and my vote is in favour. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've also seen and heard the debate, and I'm also in favour. Mr. Nicholson, is that all members present have voted?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. It's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Then, members, as far as I'm aware, that brings us to the the end of our applications and the agenda for today. Can I thank you all for coming along today, and also wish you all a happy and healthy Christmas. And I think we might be considering moving planning committees to a Thursday, because it's been the shortest meeting I think I've ever had.